And welcome back to Hangry and Horny with my love, Judy Floreal. This is part 3 of a series, and it's been quite a journey, quite a long and ongoing story of what you've been through, Judy, in terms of your recovery from abuse and trauma. I have to forgive myself for being a ranting lunatic. I sounded a bit, in my opinion, self-righteous in the last episode, and just learned quite a bit about, we talked about listening, and I found that I was just like monologuing forever, right? And I just wanted to give you a chance to get deeper into your story and the repetitive loops that you found yourself even after, being booted out of a cult. And you had mentioned that you found yourself back into a similar situation with your marriage, your first marriage. And, we just want to hear more of that and how you were able to see the pattern that was repeating itself and how you were able to notice the similar symptoms. It's just different scenario, and how you've been able to rehabilitate and heal from that.
Thank you for having me back. Straight in. So I quite quickly got together with my ex-husband at the end of being booted out of the cult church. We had tried to go out when I was still there, and he,
like, for people to know, this was your first husband.
First husband. Yeah,
you weren't married and then divorced and got back together. You were married for the first time with this fellow.
Yeah, and they didn't approve of him because he wasn't within that organization, and they kind of blamed it on other different things, and they didn't approve of it. So we kind of went out for a bit, and then I basically was forced to break it off, and then I gave in and went back out again with him. And I'm not too sure exactly when the whole process was, but got booted out. We got like kind of properly together then, got on really great, really nice guy, met him at work. He was kind of struggling a little bit. He wasn't from the UK, he was on a visa, and I didn't really think we would have much in common because he was from India. So I didn't, in my ignorance, I have to say, I just assumed he was Hindu, and he wasn't. He was Christian. I'd had a Christian background. Parents had been ministers within the church over in India. So we kind of got on well and wanted to give him a hand, and just usual Judith, I can help, and I can help you with this and that and the other, and just we got closer and closer, and going out was great, and there was a problem on his visa later on, and he had to go back to India, and it took quite a while to try and get him back again, and we ended up basically getting engaged quicker and getting married quicker to enable us to get a fiancé visa to get him back over, and that was all okay. We overcame a lot of things, and I kind of felt like, this is a good test, because we're having to go through all these hoops to get this to happen, and we worked so well together as a team, and it really seemed to work well together. And the whole work, distance, calling every day, getting to really know somebody on a phone all the time rather than being distracted by going out all the time or doing things together. It was quality time on the phone. I really felt like, this was the guy. And everything was good, and got married. And within a few days, it was like, something's not right. He wasn't happy. There were even signs actually on the marriage day that he wasn't happy. But you kind of batted off, and then within a couple of weeks it was like, something's really wrong, and I automatically assumed it was my fault. That was kind of my default position. Something's wrong, it's my fault. What did I do? What did I say? What didn't I do? What didn't I say? And then going into, how can I fix it? And I would be always on the fix-it mode. You know, are you okay? Is everything okay? Can I get you something? You know, just like over and above. But that's pretty much how I ran. That's how I worked as a little girl. You know, I thought as a little girl, when things were wrong with Dad, that it was my fault. You know, he had, you know, made it quite clear that I was, you know, sometimes his favourite, and that I could make him happy. So that I thought, okay, this is my job to make Dad happy from a very young age, from about 4 years old. So whenever Dad wasn't happy, whenever he was being violent or abusive, I was like, what did I do wrong? And would overanalyze from a very young age, overanalyzing everything I was doing, everything I was saying, and being really critical on myself. And I just always took on that responsibility. And when Dad was out of line, particularly with Mum and my sisters, I felt so bad. Like I felt like I was carrying the guilt of that, and it was my fault, and I needed to fix it. So I never really got out of that mindset. And that foundation, that blueprint was there. So then it just kept on repeat. You know, things would go wrong at work, and I would assume it was my fault, and then, you know, go over and above to try and fix it. So I just kept doing that in lots of different scenarios. So the marriage wasn't any different. And yeah, it was, you know, it was bit by bit. There was struggles at the start. When you have a marriage visa and you get married, you can't physically work until you have that marriage license in your hand, and then you have to go off to the Home Office and get all that approved, etc., before you can physically work. And there was problems getting work. There was problems getting like decent paid work as well. So I kind of felt like that's why he's down, that's why he's grumpy, that's why he's moody, that's why, you know. So then I'm trying to go, oh, have you looked at this, have you looked at that, da, 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 and he's like, you know, getting snappy back. But, you know, kept on going. But that's a lot of responsibility when you live in the south of England. I'm on a salary, working in a hotel, not the best salary in the world, not that much above minimum wage. Might have even been minimum wage, I'm not sure. But supporting both of us, basically on a minimum wage salary, is no mean feat. But we did it. We did it for about a full year, because we had to do that before getting married and then afterwards. So yeah, just kept on, and that's what I did. I just kept on. He wanted us to get out of the hospitality industry because we never really had time together with different shifts. So I kind of unwillingly left, really, and went into recruitment, which was a bit of a shark-infested pool of water to go into. It wasn't an easy environment to work in, that's for sure. And along with things getting more tricky within the marriage, I was now working within an environment where I was actually ended up getting bullied quite badly at work by the management. So you wrap so many different layers of pressures going on. It just all started slowly to build, and I started getting sicker and not being able to cope with things, and not being able to do so much because I was working full time. I was dropping him off to work, picking him up from the train station, cooking all the food, cleaning all the household, because that's what Indian wives do. And I fell right into that role of that's all my responsibility. We're also trying to renovate the house. I'm trying to make more money. I'm trying to get commission at work to make sure that we can pay for, you know, all the renovations and stuff that we were trying to do. I was also, you know, helping to host our Bible group meeting that would go on every week, singing at the church, volunteering in the Sunday school, volunteering when we had different events and that kind of hospitality thing. Yeah, I was busy. But that's how I worked, and I think a lot of the busyness was distraction as well, because I wasn't really happy at work and I wasn't really happy at home. So I got my happiness helping like the little kids at Sunday school, because they're just always a delight, and helping the youth in the band. So they always struggled because the youth didn't want to like stand up and sing, so I would stand up and sing, even though I was definitely not youth and twice their age. I'd be standing up there singing with the youth band at church. You know, there's parts like that where like I really did enjoy it. You mean, and I was able to give back in the small group and sharing within that, like within our Bible group. Really enjoyed that as well. So,
but what was the pattern there? Why are you always constantly doing so much? You said it was a part of distraction. You're doing that when you're in the cult as well. It's been something that you've overcompensated or coped since you were a little girl. just trying to please people, especially the ones that you love. And in the case, it just went from your like father, and then you ended up in the cult. You got out of it. You were with your first husband, and it just kept looping, you know. So what was going on for you in terms of, you know, you had left or talked about something was wrong. You knew something was wrong after a couple of days of being married, and then you go into crisis mode. I need to patch this up. I gotta make them happy. You know, it was never about like what makes you happy and what you needed. And so again, what were the sort of signs or symptoms that you noticed that were arising again, but this time in the form of your first husband? What did you notice about him that completely changed?
Really just being kind, you know, being loving and being kind. There was a lot less affection. Even though we weren't in India, he wouldn't want to always hold my hand, you know, or, you know, show any signs of kind of public affection, which you can't really do in India. But of course we weren't living in India, we were living in the UK. It's just getting colder, you mean? And I think everybody's would pick that up, but particularly a female would pick that up. If somebody is being just that bit colder, or like won't want to sit with you on the sofa and, you know, cuddle up and watch something, and always wanting their space. And
that's so bizarre, because that's during your honeymoon time, right? Like,
yeah,
that's so quickly a big contrast, a 180. So
it was really big, and I, you know, put it down to, you know, so many other different factors. So, and there was so much pressure, you know, particularly on that whole job front. And, you know, for him, it wasn't just a job, it was his career. It was his chance to make it in the UK. It was his chance to, you know, I think prove, you know, to people at home and prove to himself that, you know, he could really make it here. It was a big deal. He was on that visa, you know, the visa only lasts for so long. And it's, you know, getting that real big chance, that opportunity to make it happen. And also knowing that we've got big bills coming in because of the visa process. You don't just pay one chunk, it keeps coming. Those big chunks kept coming. I think it was about 8,000-9,000 in the end. It was a lot of money, and that was back in like, you know, the kind of mid 2000s. So it's a huge amount of money, and I think that pressure was there. And then I think he always wanted to achieve as well. He wanted a good car. He wanted, you know, we had the apartment, which was perfect, but then wanted a big house. And eventually we like saved up and got, you know, the big house, and just all these kind of things of trying to achieve it. He was on a mission. He was on a drive, and actually I was facilitating his goals, not our goals. I was facilitating what he wanted and his goals. I think the whole being busy and being distracted for me started very, very young. You know, we grew up and we had to work. As little girls, we had to work. You know, met plenty of times chasing after the lambs that we had, because we were smaller and more nimble than Dad was. But like trying to do it in massive big welly boots, and, you know, struggling to do stuff, struggling to do labour on a farm when you're small and not as capable. But we were always expected to work. We had chores within the home. We had chores out in the farm. And we were always expected to work and to do that. And then that became life later on as well, when Mum was sick and we did everything within the home. You know, all four of us, we would all have our jobs, we'd all have our roles, we'd share it all out, and we would just run the home, you know, from a young age, and just do everything. You know, there wasn't somebody there to see you in the morning. You know, you got yourself up, you got yourself dressed and washed, and breakfast and your lunch made, and you walked to school. And, you know, we did that on repeat, looked after my little sister. We all did that. So that was part of me, and I think it's also part of the work ethic that I came from. You know, country folk tend to work, and they work hard. And unfortunately we weren't the side that work hard and play hard. We just worked hard.
Yeah, just worked hard and worked hard, never actually did anything for yourself.
Yeah, not much fun. Your social life is going to church.
Wow.
So there was some fun in there, but not a huge amount. You know, we came from a family where I talk about teetotaler, and you're like, what's that about? Basically, you don't drink. There wasn't ever alcohol there. I've got no recollection of my mum ever drinking. Very little of my dad drinking, but that was much kind of later on in life. People didn't drink. It wasn't the thing that you did within a good Presbyterian Protestant family.
So Protestants don't party.
That's how it was when I grew up.
Yeah, well, Catholics do for sure.
They definitely do for
yeah,
sure.
You see that here.
And I think a lot of people here work hard, but they play hard as well. And playing hard doesn't have to mean, getting drunk, but it's just having fun, letting your hair down, singing, laughing, having a bit of crack. That's great. I didn't have a lot of that.
So you were born into slavery.
Not quite.
So basically you had that momentum carrying you through childhood into adulthood. So all you ever did, not all you ever really knew, was to work, including to sort of take care of the house and the family. And then, it went from a church to your husband. So it was constantly being in service.
Yeah.
And that broke you down, broke your health, right? So all these things started to come. You started to notice that your health was falling apart, your body was falling apart. And again, back to the question, because what changed? Because you had all of those sort of financial commitments and the visa process and his goals, right? Not necessarily your goals, right? Because I don't think that was even probably discussed what you wanted, right? It was all about what he wanted and pleasing him, and then his career, right? So what changed overnight or within a couple of days of being married, right? Like, obviously there was a lot of drama during your wedding right before, but it turned out, from what I hear, I've seen the pictures, everybody had a jolly time, right? But then it just completely shifted into something's wrong.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have any money for a honeymoon, and the minister who married us, a lovely man, he was like, do you want to borrow our caravan, which was on the south coast of England? And it was lovely, and we had just this whole week caravan to ourselves and just time to chill and relax, because I was exhausted. Jeez, it was a full workup trying to organise all of that. And we only had a couple of days there. He was a bit grumpy and whatever, and then he was like, right, I want to go up to the Home Office to sort out the whole visa so I'll be able to work. We'd only had 3 days. We were supposed to be there for at least a week, and he was just like, no, I want to do this. So it's like a 5-hour drive from where we were up to Croydon to kind of get all that sorted out. We didn't actually get it sorted out in that day, then had to go back up again. So there was basically no honeymoon. There was no rest and just enjoy each other. We didn't have that. It was just a couple of days of exhausted flopping, and then right back on this mission of sorting out the visa and what's next. So that was just that, the pushing to get. There wasn't really any kind of being, relaxing, enjoying each other, enjoying that time, or having kind of any really.
That's what you already knew anyways.
Yeah, but
your whole life.
I think it was just, there was quite a bit of disappointment there, because I suppose in my mind I'd got this picture, which I think a lot of girls do. You just think that everything's going to be great after you get married. You're going to have your happy ever after, and it really wasn't. And it was quite a slap, quite quickly down to reality, and oh, right, okay, here we go. And then just on that treadmill of right, next, and just pushing way through, sleeping, just falling into bed exhausted every day, and then up to carry on, repeat again and again and again. From a health point of view, I suppose I had lots of different things, because we were so accident prone as when we were young, and that carried on in adulthood. So there was always some injury of some sort to deal with, going over my ankle, or completely pulled all the muscles of my ankle trying to cycle in a rush to get to church one day. There was always some wee drama going on of some sort. And from one of the kind of main issues that I'd had, well, kind of two main issues that I'd had from a kid. One was because I think I was such a bottle upper, and I didn't express, it wasn't really safe to express when you were upset or when you were frustrated or angry or whatever was going on, because, you know, if you showed that, it was like, I'll give you something to cry about, you know, basically shut up or I'll hit you again. And that was a big phrase that we all had when we were young. So you learned to shut up, you learned to just keep it all in. And I did that more so, I think, than any of my sisters. You know, they had different outlets at different points, but I always seemed to be the one that held it all together. I always seemed to be the good girl. I was always the girl that never rebelled or never like lost her crap or never, you know, let things go. Like, still, I'm 42 and still not drunk. I mean, I've never been drunk in my life. I never really let my hair down. I never really rebelled or let go. And I think because of that bottling up of all those emotions and all those feelings, my physical body bottled up. I just didn't go to the toilet. I was regularly going to the doctors with mom or with dad, basically to then go, oh, right, okay, she's in so much pain because she hasn't been to the toilet in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? And it's like not normal to not do a number 2 for like 2 weeks. And that was a regular thing. Like, I don't know how many laxatives I had over the years, but there were many different types. I can visually see 7 different types from when I was a kid. And that was an issue right up until fairly recently, and really until I met you. And then we started learning, you know, you taught me so much about health. And really, health is your wealth. That's the whole point. If you haven't got your health, you haven't really, you know, you can't really enjoy anything else.
Yeah, if you have all the money in the world, the wealth, but you can't enjoy it.
Exactly.
You know, what's the point, you know?
And we've learned so much, particularly through Dr. Beck with Balance Protocol. That's been brilliant. So I'd had that issue from a little girl. As an adult, it was normal basically not to go to the toilet, you know, every kind of 5 days or something. That was fairly standard policy for me. Obviously not ideal. So basically your body's holding toxins all the time.
And there's accumulation over years of this. And so I want people to know that don't expect healing to happen overnight. Just as long as it took for you to get where you're at, it's going to take quite some time to undo all those old habits and trauma and all that stuff to heal. So give yourself time, be patient, just be consistent, you know.
And the really interesting thing for me, talking so much about going to the toilet here, sorry, is that when I'm stressed, I don't go to the loo. It's day and night. It's black and white. I could eat all the fibre I could want to eat. I could eat all the fruit, vegetables. You know, I always have had a good diet, and more so now. But it wasn't the diet. It's literally, if I'm stressed out, I don't go to the bathroom. And it's super clear.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you know, this is the blueprint that you were given or you developed out of a way to cope with everything, you know, all the hard things you had to go through and painful things. And so we're trying to get a new blueprint. And you had mentioned all these things in the prior podcast, including, you know, improving a new kind of signal into your nervous system that has to be rewired, so to speak. And so, like I said, all these things take some time. And we'll get into, we had alluded to a friend of ours that we've been working with who's been helping us with our blueprint. And his name is AA Matt. You know, we've had a hard time trying to describe, like, what exactly did he do or what's his title, right? And we kept asking him, and he just said, like, hey, you know, people call me the wizard of the Emerald Isle. Mm-hmm. And it's true, like, he is like some sort of a wizard, and people have done like multiple programs, whether it's cleanses or, you know, nutrition, exercise, just trying to change things, but they find themselves repeating the loops of some sort of coping mechanism, addiction, falling off the wagon. And everybody has the right intentions. They're trying to heal. They're trying to stop the old patterns and behaviors. They try everything, you know. You talk about, like, every kind of diet, and they just don't understand why they keep falling off the wagon. And all these things work, but until you work with the actual programming that is running through your system and create a new like blueprint of possibilities, you're just going to keep doing Groundhog Day. You're going to keep repeating it. It's going to be so frustrating because you're going to do really well. You're going to be really disciplined. You'll probably do that for a month or during a New Year's resolution. And then February rolls around, you miss a workout. You know, you don't prepare your food, you go out with your friends, and then you feel guilty, feel bad that you fell off the wagon, you give up, right? And then a year goes by and New Year's resolution again. And so my point is that if you can find someone like Double A that has the ability to see what's going on in your, I don't know, mind, your psyche, and help you address sort of those sticking points or resistant points and unlock them, and maybe install new healthy programs. And because it's not that programs are bad, it's just what programs are actually running your system. And if you can like go in there, similar to the machine that I used on you, right? But if you can actually get down to that foundation level and locate those faulty programs and delete them and replace them with programs that are empowering, it will blow you away in just little time. You know, you don't have to go through like years of therapy. Not that I'm against that, but there's all these different things that are out there that help people, but why do people keep relapsing? And that's my point. If you could find something that can get to the core of it and clear it out so that you don't find yourself in those repetitive negative loops. And so we'll definitely have Double A on at some point. But I want to get back to the question, Judy, because you keep avoiding answering. You know, it's like, yeah, all these things are happening between your first husband and you guys didn't get to enjoy, you know, relax after your wedding. But something significantly happened. It was almost like he became a different person that you knew. Right? And it's like, yeah, there's the stresses of like trying to get the visa, trying to get a career, you know, you're in a new country. I know all of those things. Like, we've been through similar things. It's just, for us, it's been magical, right? Some of the things you've said, it sounds almost like a repeat. Yeah. But how are we going to not repeat those patterns that you went through with your first husband, what I went through with my first wife? Stuff with your dad, stuff with the cult, my dad, all the cults that I've been in, and cliques that I just realized, like, holy shit, this is another loop. It just, you know, they say it's a same face, just different person, right? And so again, what was going on? I mean, how did the abuse start happening? How did you get to a place where you were like, geez, this is falling apart again, and I'm in another sort of cultic, charismatic leader, charismatic person. I'm following someone again. I'm not doing what I want. That person's not even listening to me. They're telling me what to do. You found yourself repeating the pattern, just this time instead of a group, it was with your significant other.
Trying to remember exactly what the question was.
Yeah, just again, for the fourth time. when did you realize? I mean, you said like after a couple of days something was different, right? But you stuck in there for years, right? Even after the affairs, right? And being cheated on, you're just trying to make it work. You went through counseling, so take it on.
The breaking point for me, like there was lots of sad things that had happened, and everybody on the outside, things were great. I mean, they saw this guy that would be the life and soul of the party. Good fun, very hospitable, welcoming. They loved to have him home when, we went home for Christmas and stuff. And then he'd literally be crappy to me in the car on the way back to where we were staying. And it was like, I want to be married to that person, not this one. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was literally Jekyll and Hyde. And it's horrible to live within that, and everybody thinks you've got this lovely marriage, with your friend circle and the church circle and your family circle, and living basically that lie. And that became a lot more evident to me, aware of that. And part of stresses of things when I broke down, physically, I actually ended up with like a dizziness thing called labyrinthitis, which is basically like vertigo, where you're constantly like spinning, you're vomiting, feel like you're hitting the floor, your whole sense of balance is gone. I ended up having to leave the job that I was in, the recruitment job, but I was being bullied and stuff then as well. And eventually, after being on the sick, which I absolutely hated, I went back, had an exit interview, and the director apologised and said, yeah, you were right, but I'm sorry we didn't listen to you about the manager that was bullying you, because it came all out when I was off sick that he'd been doing it to copious amounts of other people. So there'd been so many things going on. I'd had to change my job, really drop down on the salary. That impacted us then not being able to do all the work because I was bringing in the kind of the larger wage, etc. So things kind of they went through stages of not great, getting worse. And looking back in hindsight, there were actually the dates of what was going on in the Home Office. There was a year.
The visa. Yeah,
the visa. So there was a year after we'd been married. There was 3 years. There was 5 years. And now that I look back, it's as obvious as day. And I don't know if he actually intentionally was thinking that, or was it a subconscious thing? I don't know, but literally it went in stages. And for me, that kind of like big shift point was I'd had that accident where the truck had driven into me. I'd got off the motorway. I'd called him. It was literally 1.5 miles from our house. And I was like, I need your help. And kind of just saying, I'm really scared. And he didn't come. And I had to like sort all that crap by myself, sort it out with the lorry driver, comfort my friend who was in the passenger seat. The car was still drivable, drop her off. I'm in absolute state at this point. Get home, arrive in the driveway, and he's out checking the car and upset with me because of the state of the car I was in. Nothing about me, nothing about what I'd been through, nothing about was I okay. And I went into the house, and I remember I was shaking. But I was just in shock, and been through something horrific and really scary, and telling him, I need you to hold me, and he didn't. And actually I remember going up to him and putting his arm, and like literally putting his arms around me, and he still didn't hold me. And at that point we had a friend staying with us. He'd been staying with us for a while, lovely guy, from Pakistan. And I'd always felt like later on things got a bit awkward in the house, and I didn't really know what it was, and I kind of assumed that I wasn't really being a good enough wife. And he was from there, so like he was of a different religion, but I kind of thought he probably thought I wasn't really being a good enough wife, because I would answer back sometimes or whatever.
Mm-hmm. So and that was your thing too, you make a lot of assumptions.
Totally.
I do too, but I've seen you. Yeah,
but it was always the very negative assumptions. Like I would, 1 + 1 = 7, and in -7. It was never in a positive way that I would, make assumptions. It was always the negative, that the person was thinking the absolute worst of me. and that wasn't the case, but he saw that happen. He saw that event unfold, and then I think quite quickly later he was actually leaving. Just with what had happened, he didn't need to stay with us anymore, and he came back one evening, and I was like, oh, hi. Felt a bit awkward, kind of. He's not here at the moment. He's off working, because he was working up near London a few days a week. And he was like, no, I came to see you. And I'm thinking, oh no, awkward. What's he gonna say? Because things had got really awkward in the house when he was there, and I was like, well, what's gonna happen? And what he told me was his truth about what was going on within my home. And he had the guts to say it. And he basically said, Judith, he doesn't respect you at all. He treats you awfully. He expects you to do things that are way above your capabilities. As a female with the strength that you have, he was like, you work harder than any woman I've ever seen. But he is expecting way more of you than you should be giving. And he doesn't respect you. And at this point, because he doesn't respect you, he's going to go elsewhere. Basically, he's going to have affairs. He's going to do these things. And it was almost like a prophet coming into my life. Because that happened. That was all within the December. It was crazy how quickly things started to unfold from then. But he came and spoke his truth, and it was quite scary, and it wasn't expected. And I wasn't, he's a nice guy, but I wasn't close to him. But he told me his truth. And that was a big, big turning point. I think one of my biggest turning points, because he left. I just cried my eyes out. I think I cried for about 5 hours straight. I was just devastated, but I was also relieved, because I felt like I was going mad. I was trying so hard to make this work. I was trying so hard to make this guy love me, this guy look after me, and be a team and work together, and have a happy life, a happy home together. And it wasn't happening. And yeah, it was that confirmation that I wasn't going mad, and that what I thought was happening was actually happening.
So the affairs were happening before that or after? I think after. But that night, I just cried and cried and cried. And I think about 3 a.m, I gave in, and I asked for help. And it was the first time that I'd asked for help, truly asked for help. And I'd wanted to ask for help when I was a teenager. I remember the social worker that we had, she'd written out the number for a counsellor, and her name and a number, and she gave it to me, and I put it on my notice board, and I looked at, I think, for about 4 years on my notice board, and I wanted to make that call, and I wanted to ask for help, but I never did. And now I'm what age am I now then? I'm about 32. And it was the first time I asked for help. And 3 a.m, I phoned my foster parents. Makes me upset to this point, because they were there for me. And they picked up that phone and they talked to me. And they just let me pour it all out. And they had no idea. I lived in England, covered it up pretty well. They had no idea what was going on. And they were brilliant, because they weren't Judith, we'll sort this out. They were we'll sort you, we'll help you. But they were very much you've got to sort this out, Judith. They weren't come home, we'll work it all out, we're going to come and rescue you. They didn't do that. And that was such a good thing that they didn't do that. They were Judith, okay, what are you going to do about it now? What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do in next week? What do you want from this? What's the outcome that you want now? And asking me all those open questions, so I was figuring it out, because I had everybody else decide everything else for me, but they were right, what are you going to do? You're in, take control of your own life. What do you want, right? Yeah, and they were so good. And I was I want to make it work. I want to get counselling. I want to get help. We need help. Yeah, they were so good, because they didn't interject or say what they thought. They just were right, what do you want? How are you going to do it?
And then were basically getting me to commit to basically phone them back and basically check in. Because I'm the kind of person that would be like, disappear back into the shadows again and go on for like how long before I get to a breaking point. They were really good. So I'm now covertly trying to go, right, mission, get counselling, fix the marriage, fix whatever's wrong with us. I can do this. So I reached out, I think probably that next day, to a Christian counselling organisation near where I worked, and left a message with them, and they seemed really nice, and they'd been recommended before for something else, and I kind of clocked the name, so I was like, I knew where to go to. And also I didn't want it within like the church where I was, because I didn't want anybody to know what was happening. I didn't want it to be too close. So I left that with them, trusting that they'd get in touch. And that was pretty much a bit of a heartbreak situation, because I was just waiting. Then there was Christmas, New Year, still waiting for these people to get back in contact. Eventually they did. They called me in, and I had this appointment with a guy, actually, which I did think was a wee bit weird, but I was like, right, okay. And I just poured out my heart and soul to this man for about 45 minutes to an hour. I just told him everything, cried away. And he was like writing different things at that point, and I'm thinking, right, okay, waiting for him to say, right, this is what we're going to do now, and this is how we're going to help you. And he didn't say that. He was like, right, we'll be in touch when we've got time for an appointment. And I was like, right, thinking we've just had an appointment. He was like, this was an assessment. I was like, right. There was no promise of an appointment. They were really busy. And it was just like, I was devastated, because it had been such a big deal to get to that appointment and then pour my whole heart out to this man I didn't even know, and then for there to be no commitment of any appointment or any joint counselling or anything.
Yeah, you waited months and you're still waiting.
It was like months and months later that they called back and went, oh, we've got a gap now. And I'm like, oh, too late.
Yeah, and you were telling me this story earlier, and the thing that's crazy is we think that what you're going through or what I've gone through or anybody else, we're the only ones in the world that is going through these situations, and it turns out it's like ubiquitous. You know, like, what does that mean? I'm like, it's like everywhere. It's like rampant. There's problems all over the place, whether it's these sort of abusive situations or trying to save a marriage, or people are sick, they're trying to get into the hospital, whether it's a social system or, you know, a private sector. But literally all of these problems are all around us, and, you know, especially in a place where it's more like a social system, like their waiting list is ridiculous. So I can't imagine like how frustrating that is for you, because you think, okay, we're in, let's get this done, and you're still not done. He just gives you an assessment. He's like, okay, well, you know, let's do the next thing, which finally you do get an appointment, right?
Not with them.
Okay.
Not with them. Yeah, it was just so hard, because when you're at your breaking point and you're physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically exhausted, and you've got to your breaking point, and then when you've eventually reached out for help, I wasn't there. I was like, oh.
Yeah, so you're in this living situation for months still.
Yeah, it's really trying to like keep it all together. So, yeah, things between myself and my now ex-husband kind of really breaking down. There were signs then that I was like, something's up. And like, if anybody has been through when somebody's having an affair, they're just things that you notice that are different about that person, and they're undeniable, and your intuition is hot. And I just knew something was up, and it happened really quickly, and I was just like, something's up. And one day went into the bathroom. We didn't have a lock on our bathroom door, and I'm freaking out because I saw him naked in the shower, and your like alarm bells have gone off, and I'm like, ran out. And I just knew without a doubt, I just needed to find the evidence to make sure 1000% that I hadn't made it up. And, you know, you do the whole thing, going through the phone, Facebook, all of that stuff, just trawling, looking for kind of anything, any sign. I think at that point he had mentioned about a girl that he'd danced with at the Christmas party and how good a dancer she was, kind of thing. And I'd clocked the name. And yeah, a few weeks in, I basically proved it, got the evidence, phoned the hotel where he's staying all night long, the whole night long until 6:30 in the morning. You know, I needed to know for sure. And then, you know, my family were like, Judith, go. Like, I opened up and I said, and they were like, come see us, just go. And I'm like, no, I need to speak to him. They're like, you do not need to do anything with this man. And I'm like, I need to speak to him. And he lied so many times, and then eventually he was like, yeah. And then he agreed later. He was devastated, and I think he was devastated actually for himself. Not for me or what he had put me through, not for that massive rejection. And out of everything that I'd been through and everything that we'd been through together, that was the thing that broke me. It was such a personal rejection of me. It was like so deep. It was like the thing that would hurt me the most. You know, he'd like, right, tick that box. So I went through, I think about 10 days of figuring out what to do. Came back home. My foster parents were amazing. They were great. Again, being very much like, what are you going to do? How do you want to do this? And I was like,
keep going.
I need to work this. I need to make this work. And they're like, Judith, you don't need to do anything now. You know, you just, you need to do what's right for you. And they were really good. But I was so, you know, for me, when you get married, it's a commitment for life. You know, I very much believed that it was a covenant, and that it was a covenant that you made before God and before all those people that were there, that you're there for life and you work things out, and we could work this out and we could work this through. And at that point he wanted to, and that's what he was saying to me, and he looked genuinely devastated, and really genuinely wanted to work it out. So we eventually went to Relate, actually, which basically provide joint counselling, like marriage counselling, and like a private organisation. We saw them, and the lady was like, you're still in shock. It's been 2 weeks since you've basically found out about this affair. You're in shock and you're not ready for joint counselling. And she basically went, I'm not going to do counselling with you. She gave us like one session basically there, and that's where kind of her summary was. And in it, he shared things that I didn't know about him. I literally looked at him and was like, I don't know who this person is. All this stuff that he'd been through, all this abuse that he'd had, where he was left, you know, neglected, vulnerable, abused, everything right across the board. It was horrendous. I was like, I don't know who this person is, because they never thought to share any of that with me. I thought I was the messed up one. I thought I was the one that came from the really, you know, messed up childhood, and I was the one with the issues, but he had worse than me. But I'd never thought to open up or tell me anything about it. And I was just like brain blown. But anyway, this lady had said basically, you're not ready for joint counselling. Both of you go off for 6 weeks and have individual counselling, and then come back to me and we'll assess and see where you are. So we did it, and I found this lady, and she was great, and it was a big deal seeing her and opening up to her. And through the sessions, she kept going back to my dad. She kept going back to my childhood, and I remember getting frustrated with her, and I said, I don't understand why you keep talking about my dad, because I'm here to save my marriage. I'm here to work through what just happened with my husband. Why do you keep talking about my dad? Why do we keep going back there? It's not about that. And she was like, no, that's where it all comes from. And it took me a long time to figure out what she was on about. So he did his own counselling, wasn't as committed as I was, but did it, and then we did the joint counselling together, and more kind of unravelled and more unravelled. And then we eventually changed that counsellor, went to another counsellor, and later on in that process of months of counselling, and just a fortune, it's an absolute fortune to have private counselling and to have it weekly for both of you, and then for joint counselling. It was absolute fortune, and it was really putting a lot of pressure on us. He opened up and said he had continued to have the affair. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like doing everything I can to make that work, and then for that to come down crashing on me. I mean, and I'd made that commitment. I was going to do everything I could to save this marriage, and I was going to do everything I could within my strength. And my family were saying, please don't go, Judith. Please don't do this. You've been through enough. You've tried long enough and hard enough. Don't do it.
And what does that sound like?
Me not listening, and me in my little mind-controlled world.
No.
What?
Who does that remind you of?
Of not listening?
No, that's trying everything to make it work. Just turning the other cheek. That's pretty much forgiving.
My mum?
Yes.
My mum. Yeah, I remember actually when I was back home and standing at my mum's grave and crying and saying sorry and promising to her that even though I'd ended up in almost a roll by roll same scenario as mum had, I just hadn't had kids at that point. That I was like, I promised her that I wouldn't have the outcome that she had, that I wouldn't let it continue, and that I wouldn't let it destroy me and get sick like mum had got sick and then died of cancer. And it was basically saying, making that promise to her. It was a big deal. It was a big deal standing there making that promise to her, because how devastated would she be seeing that same outcome and seeing history repeat itself? And I was so close, because I really had started to get so unwell. So that's kind of come to a bit of a summary on this one. Was that carried on with the counselling, and I was stronger than I thought I ever could be. And I think the difference with me at that point was I was making my own choices at that point. I wasn't following somebody else. I wasn't listening to somebody else. I wasn't being controlled by somebody else. I was making my own choices. And yes, I was choosing to go back into a really difficult situation, but I needed to know for myself that I'd done everything that I could to make it work. And I was choosing help, and I'd asked for help. And during the counselling, counselling was so hard. And there were two beautiful ladies at the church, Eastleigh Baptist Church, that I'd mentioned before, and they were amazing because I was really struggling in the counselling. I was literally on an emotional roller coaster. Counselling was on a Thursday. I would be a car wreck at work on a Friday, and then exhausted, and I was just a bit all over the place. And one of the ones was like, I said to her, I think the thing that I need the most, I don't really need to talk after the counselling, because I said I'm just a bit exhausted at the point. I just said I just need a big hug. And she's like, that's fine. So I'd get off the train, I'd walk to her house, I'd knock on the door, and she wouldn't say anything, and she literally just hugged me because I'm taller than her. So I'm standing there, she's on the doorstep, and she just enveloped me up. And we didn't need to say anything. And it was the best thing. It was that, because when you're having counselling and you're going through and you're bringing all this stuff up, sometimes it's like open heart surgery where it hasn't healed. They rip open the stitches again, you're in again and again, you're bleeding and oozing out everywhere, and then you're kind of patched up a bit, and then you're back out to function in the real world again. And it literally feels like you had open heart surgery, and you haven't come to this nice little conclusion and you feel okay to go home. I was just a mess. Sometimes my poor flatmate that I ended up living with, she was just an absolute star, because sometimes I would come home and I'd cry my eyes out for 45 minutes straight, really crying your eyes out, or I would be all energetic and jumping off the walls, a bit manic, or I would be trying to pick an argument with her, and she's the least argumentative person you've ever met, or I'd be swearing. I was just all over the shop. And I remember chatting to a counsellor because one of my counsellors migrated to Australia, and I was devastated. I didn't know how I was going to cope without her. And then later on I got this other counsellor, and she was, I said, I think I'm going mad. I'm literally like manic, and what's wrong with me? And she's like, you're angry. And I was like, no. And she's like, you are. I'm like, but this is and she's like, you're angry. And I didn't know, because I hadn't let myself be angry. I remember promising as a really little girl that I wasn't going to be like my dad, and I wasn't going to be angry, because anger then produced all this horribleness that we went through, because Dad got angry because he flew off the handle. And I promised myself I wouldn't be angry, and that was that bottling up of the emotions, and then the bottling up of me physically. It was just, I'd been bottled up for so long and never let those true emotions out. And being angry was scary because I didn't know what it was. And I couldn't, it was like a car that's on like driving and you don't know how to drive it, and you're like suddenly trying to like take over and like not crash kind of thing. I didn't know where it was going to end. Yeah,
I just want to interject here. So like, you know, things like anger, or, you know, the other 2 episodes, we seem like we're like bashing church as well. And that's the thing, like things aren't black and white. Like things are more in color and shades of gray. I don't know about 50 shades of gray, but but the point is that like church can be a good and a very safe place, a great organization for connection to the divine and to others in the community. So we're not like bashing church. It's just more the churches that cover stuff up or take advantage of people, including young children. So, you know, you had a church, a couple of friends there, you're still in touch to this day. They were there. They were like the sort of poster people of like a real solid organization that really does help those in need and are inclusive. And the same around anger, like we've been taught that you can't be angry, you know, you have to bottle it up, or it can, no, you need to express anger just in a like very constructive and healthy way, not a dangerous or a destructive way. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to emphasize there.
Thank you.
So this gal says, you're angry.
Yeah. And I just didn't recognize it. I didn't know really that emotion, and then I didn't know how to control it. And it's interesting because it's come back many times where I've tried to deal with it, and it's kind of felt like this monster inside. So
I tell you all the time, Judy, get it out. Exercise your demons. Express it. I'm here. Show me that ugly side. You know, just get it out. Release it. You know, and then I'm still here.
Yeah.
Right?
It was hard. You know, showing all those kind of raw emotions. They were suppressed and repressed for so long. And I did kind of kept putting them back in the box. And Matt, we call him AA Matt because it's MAAT. Really, the box got opened in the first appointment. And the first appointment was amazing. It was really incredible. And it wasn't anything like I expected it. And it was like the best counselling session that you'd had times 100. And I'm not over-expressing that. I've never known any therapy as good and as effective as what he does. It's like other things skirt around the issues or skirt around the secondary, you know, outskirts, but this goes right into the core of what is the root. What is right at that root? You know, sometimes when I'm dealing with rejection or dealing with other things, he's like, no, what about that loneliness? And I'm like, oh. And you go back to feeling like 3 or 4 when you felt lonely, all alone. And it goes right back into those core points where those core things happened in your childhood whether you had a good childhood or a bad childhood, there's always key points, key memories where something was missing, where you felt neglected, or you felt rejected, or you felt lonely, or you felt angry, or you felt, and you got stuck. You weren't able to kind of process that because you were, you weren't able to. You were a child, and maybe the ones around you didn't recognize it or know how to help you, and it just kind of gets like stored away in there, for years later to kind of come out. But yeah, afterwards I was like this unleashed person. I thought I was going to destroy everything around me for about 10 days because it was like so much
pain. It was longer than that.
For me, it was 10 days of just going through those crazy manic emotions again, where I was all over the shop and couldn't control it and couldn't control myself and was just all over the shop. And then having a really simple conversation with somebody, and it dawned on me, and I thought, I'm just scared. It wasn't feeling the emotions, and it wasn't facing the past or facing the demons of the past. Those weren't the issues. It was because I was scared. That was the key.
Scared of what?
Scared of the emotions, scared of feeling them, scared that they were going to overtake me and that I would be some monster that I didn't want to be.
Like your father.
Yeah, exactly. That I wouldn't be able to control it, that I wouldn't be able to control myself. Because it just felt like this big tidal wave of huge, massive emotions, and I just felt overwhelmed with it.
Yeah, years of it.
Yeah, literally.
Built up.
And then once I was like, oh, I'm just scared of feeling the emotions. It's not the actual emotions themselves. It was just the fear.
Or the consequences of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that really broke it. And then I was like, okay, I can deal with this now. I can cope with this now. You were amazing, I have to say. High five. Patience of a saint. Tony Floreal.
Wasn't easy.
I know.
But we made it through. We did it.
Totally.
You did it.
And that's, it's been a big journey.
You love me?
I totally love you. But it's been such a big journey, going through so much, and it wasn't an overnight thing. There have been so many things, so many people that have helped me, like beautiful lady in the church there every week, letting me pour my heart out to her, praying together, sharing Bible verses together, letting me be part of her family, just enveloping me up within their celebrations and within their dinners and things that they were doing. Just, there's so many beautiful people, and I find that from really early on, that families would just envelope me up into their environment. It happened in Scotland, complete strangers. I walked into the church, first time I went to the church in Scotland when I was working there, and they just were like, come to dinner. Yeah. Like, I don't even know you.
There's good people out there.
They're amazing. Yeah. They're amazing, and they just enveloped me up, and it happened no matter where I was.
Yeah.
And I'm still in touch. Still in touch with those families. They're still there. Older couples. And that was great. And I had it with my school friends as well, because I related to my parents more than I related to my friends. I loved my friends, and we got on great. But I'd been through so much adult stuff by the time I was 12. That I needed an adult to talk to, because they'd experienced loss, they'd experienced losing somebody close, they'd experienced heartache, they'd experienced so many different things that I related more with them, and I needed those conversations, and I loved those conversations, and I love those people dearly and those families dearly, because they give me a chance to see a stable, loving family home, and to know it existed, and to feel safe. And it might have just been for an hour or a couple of hours. Many a times I went to a friend's home when I was at primary school, and I just would run up, and she was like, oh, she's not here, she's out horse riding. And then she'd just look at me standing like a little orphan on the doorstep going, do you want to come in? I'm like, yeah. I'd spend the day cleaning the house with her, and I loved it. I was so happy. This little one just cleaning, I just loved it, because I felt loved by her, and I felt so warm and safe and accepted there. And you can always make a difference for somebody. You can see when somebody's struggling, you can see when somebody's upset. It might be just the smile that they needed. That lovely guy, we saw him upset on the corner, and we were going off to get ice creams, and we had extra ice creams, and I was like, he needs an ice cream. And we went up and gave him an ice cream, and I've never seen anybody scoff an ice cream so quickly before, but he was so delighted and shared his little heart about why he was upset. And I just think it's something.
And then we're like, "You want another one?" And he's like, "Really?" Yes. That was gone in an instant too. We're like, "How are you not having brain freeze right now?" But no, there's angels out there. Like you're saying that sometimes you have to see an evidence of something contrary to what you're used to, right? But that's the thing about our perception of reality, right? Is that if you never experienced anything of what you know, then you don't know that there's any other possibilities until that possibility actually occurs, and it's evident to you that that's another way that people can see the world or live. And that's why like the news is a little skewed, because they're just putting out negativity, and that's what sells. Like people want to see the car accidents, right? Even though they talk about not wanting it, but that's just, they're just tapping into the deep primal layer of our brain that's wired towards negativity bias. And so the fact that you could see that there are stable family structures that aren't abusive, that people don't take advantage of each other, that are, you know, have more than enough and are spilling over to help others, bring them in their home, make them feel comfortable, and so that is there. It's just, again, if you grew up in an environment since you're a child and all you ever saw was abuse and trauma, experienced trauma and pain and suffering, it's understandable why, like, my father went through or is the way he was or is, and he's no longer with us, but your father, our families, you know, everybody talks about like how, you know, our family is the crazy family, like everybody's trying to like fight over who has a crazier family, you know, and it's breaking that chain of abuse and cycle that been passed on to each generation. So that's also part of healing. It's, can we break these chains and patterns that have been inherited on a like DNA level, and then as a emotional programming based on like what you witnessed and experienced as a child, which your parents passed on to you. Because again, you know, I'm not a parent yet, but the point is that it's not what the parent says, the kids model what the parents do. And that's the same with us. Like, we're trying to talk less and sort of do more in terms of more of that empowering stuff. So like the evidence, the proof in the pudding is, like in the case of our health, we're trying to exude health by being healthy, by living healthy, and doing things that are healthy, having a mindset that's healthy. It's not just nutrition and sort of all the common sense things. It's a deeper thing. It's basically trying to create a better blueprint, a more empowering blueprint that doesn't have sort of the horrible things that happened in the past through generations passed on to us, but it's sort of reprogramming and redeveloping that blueprint that is out of our choice, that's empowered, and that we can break that chain, and then we can pass that on, right? Whether it's through our kids or people around us. So it's possible to completely heal, to shift. I think we've been examples of that. And it is like an onion layer, you know, an onion, you just keep peeling. It's an ongoing process. And, but to understand that you can sort of reframe reality just by making a decision, by asking yourself, because this is what like I love about AA Matt, like we rave about this guy. you know, and the work that he's done, because it's so quick and effective. It doesn't take years of, you know, psychoanalysis. And again, I'm not taking away from those things. They have their value. All these things do, but a lot of times, like you said, it took a lot of time. It took a lot of money. It took a lot of, like, you know, just effort and you name it. It's like it's not something that gets to the root of it. And what he does that's different is that he asks you just point blank, what do you want? And at first you're kind of like, oh shit, what do I want, right? Because even if you are given the freedom to decide what you want, you're kind of scared to say what you want, like, and it's like, oh, well, where is that coming from, right? Like, why do you feel like guilty, like saying like, this is what I want for my life, right? Because it almost sounds like selfish. And you have to overcome that, right? Because it isn't like selfish. I see it as like a self-investment. It's instead of investing in all these like different financial things, why don't we start investing in ourselves? Because we actually can control the outcome better than just putting money out into these different sort of stocks or crypto or you name it, right? But if you can invest in yourself, and that to me is like what self-love is, and self-care, even self-help, that can go a little bit screwy there. But the point is that you can control by making the choice and then deciding like, how do you want to live your life? How do you want to live the rest of your life? No matter where you are in your lifetime or lifeline, right? It's never too late, right? And it's almost like, to me, that's where the true like born again stuff happens, right? It's not necessarily having this like experience, like I've certainly had like multiple times what I call a holy shift. And like we were saying in prior episodes, like we sound very like Christian in terms of the lingo, and the like having this like dark night of soul, and then a transformation in terms of like feeling like brand new, you know. But like, what are you gonna do from that point, or what are you gonna do right now, as he would say, like, what do you want? And then work your way, reverse engineer like that outcome, similar to what your foster parents did. They didn't tell you what to do, how to do things. They said, Judy, what are you gonna do? What do you want? Right? And so they gave you that like direction. The brain needs sort of the outcome, has to see a vision to like move towards a goal, an aim. And that way you're not at the mercy of life and the world and chaos. You can always come back to like, at that moment, what do I want right now? And have a decision where you cut off all possibilities outside of the outcome that you want, or a choice. You can consciously choose to break out of an old pattern and create a new one and go like, that's the direction I want to move in life. So we love Double A, you know. We have to be careful, right? Because, you know, he's not a guru, he's not a teacher, he's not, you know, I guess the closest thing would be like a guide. But apparently everybody's calling him a wizard, you know, and I agree. It's been a fun journey working with him, being friends with him. And, you know, I was crazy skeptical. I still am. You know, a lot of things I'm like, I just, like I said, I don't want to lose myself into another person or another self-help thing or a cult thing, whether it's all this stuff from biohacking to, like we talked about, even the machine that we use for getting people out of pain or to restore the proper electrical flow and connectivity in their body, removing resistance. But if we don't deal with the core blueprint, then all of these things that are modalities and therapeutic, they just are no different from taking a pharmaceutical pill. They'll help, they'll alleviate whatever symptom you have, but until you address the cause, the core root of things, you're just gonna keep repeating, and you're gonna keep taking these things, you know, and then that's where we're at. We're like, we want to get rid of the blocks, the resistance, the things that are preventing us from living a really awesome life. And it's just so cool to see you heal. Like I said, it took time, and we're still working on things. But the fact that, like, we're seeing each other as individuals, right? There's no cookie cutter approach. Everybody has a specific need that needs to be addressed. So that's what we look at as a litmus test when we work with other health professionals or people that are just masters of understanding the psyche and sort of the mind, and they treat you like an individual. They sit down, they talk to you, they spend time with you, they get to know you, and then they address the cause, the root of things. Because, you know, we love modern medicine, incredible. The pharmaceutical corporations, but the medicines certainly have helped people. But it's, to be honest, it's still sick care, right? Like true health care, even on the sort of organic side and the, you know, all the modalities that are from that, and the alternative therapies are just as bad, because I would say not bad, but just their intentions are the same, to make profit. So yes, go see a medical doctor when you need them, right? And when you go and look at alternative doctors and therapists, look at what their intentions are. Are they able to address the cause, or are they just selling you, instead of a pill, but they're selling you supplements? And then you have like a whole stack of different supplements in your cupboard instead of like pharmaceutical. It's similar business model. So
I think also as well, you need to be able to admire that person, that they're showing what they do. You mean, if they're a nutritionist, that they look, you know, healthy and strong, or, you know, if they're a therapist, they've got their shit together. I mean, you're able to see, oh, they're an example of what they do.
That's right. That's number one.
I mean, and yeah.
Do they practice what they preach? Do they live? Are they an example of their story, an example where they healed thyself, physician? So, but that was another tangent, because you did bring up AA Matt. And what's up, buddy? We really appreciate your help and your friendship.
The thing as well with AA is that every time I've had an appointment, he helps guide, but I am doing the work. I have led that appointment. It's gone with what I've been feeling, what I've been seeing, what I've, you know, felt, all that kind of stuff. And for me, it's like he helps me unlock it, that I am actually doing it. He's just guided in the process. And that's a very different therapy than I've had before, where it's like they're the therapist, they know what they're doing, you don't really know what's going on, and then, you know, out you pop at the end of the session.
With the same thing, like, are you just following their orders, or are they basically asking you, like, what do you want? How do you want to do it? How can we best serve you? And it's not, yeah, there is like almost a similar thing of like different bullet points of things that will help you gain your health, and then the symptoms just kind of disappear. it's a different paradigm. But like you said, he's not doing the work for you. You're doing the work. You're empowered. He just kind of like showing you. He's not even telling you. He just sort of like hinting.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole other ball of wax that comes from like somebody that is telling you what to do. And we can talk about karmic consequences, and like that's not like what you want. Like you don't want to take on the karma by like just giving people the answers, you know, and it's so easy just to give people the answers, but in the end they don't really change, right? They don't.
Well, I think it's integrating.
Yeah,
It's integrating what you've learned.
it's all that stuff. Like the same with you know, when you're learning a math problem or something, right? It's like it's easy to go to the back of the book and get the answers, or ask somebody to get the answer, but there's no sense of like ownership, right? And like responsibility for yourself. And that's the thing that I find is missing in society, because everything is like given to us. Everything's quick and fast and easy, and we don't know like how to struggle, how to be patient, and how to like work through a process and get to like learn about ourselves and learn. Because when you finally stumble across the solution, it feels good that you cracked the code yourself. Like we want all these cheat codes, but it just feels cheap, you know? It's like feels cheap. Like cheating does feel cheap. Like you know, if you look in the mirror, like you didn't really like earn that, right? It's just like easy money, right? It doesn't feel good. It's not satisfying that like you came to the answer by somebody sort of like guiding you. They're kind of like the I don't know, there's like bowling when they put the things up for the kids, right? They like kind of help guide the ball out of the gutter. So they're like keeping you out of the gutter and moving towards the answer and the solution, whatever that may be, whatever the context is. But we are at an hour 22.
Okay.
So I'll probably go for another 10 minutes. So yes, you obviously have your earth angels. It's almost like a timing thing, the way the journey works. But what was the final bit where you decided, what was the moment you decide, okay, I'm getting a divorce, I'm choosing to have a new life?
I didn't make the decision. Was the decision the same as before? I got kicked out of the cult. I didn't make that choice.
Another blessing in disguise, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Sometimes the universe does that.
I was committed to the end.
Like a lemming.
Yeah, but also, you know, I kept that promise to myself that I would do everything that I could.
You're going to go down with the ship. You weren't going to hop off the Titanic. By the way, the Titanic was built near where we live.
But no, but there was the thing though that I proved to myself was that, you know, going back to somebody who'd been unfaithful, going back into that situation, choosing to go back in that situation and doing everything that I could, you know, opening yourself back up again emotionally, physically, mentally, to be back in a marriage again after that's happened, that is not easy. That is a very hard thing to do. And I did it. And I did it willingly, and I forgave him. And I truly did it. And I remember... I
didn't know Jesus was a woman.
I also remember making the decision, because I'd seen other people that had been through difficulties within their marriage, and they used it as like a beating rod. You did this. You did that. And they kept bringing it back.
Yeah, turn the table around. I couldn't have done that. There's no way. So that's, you know.
Yeah, and like it wasn't easy, but I made the choice. I don't know when, but I remember making a really clear choice that I was going to forgive, and I was going to forgive completely. And if I could do that, then I'd go back in and do my best, because I wasn't going to be that that woman with that major chip on her shoulder, and I wasn't going to cast it up because it would eat at me and it would eat at them, and it would just be game over, and it would just destroy things anyway. So if there was any happiness, it wouldn't really be lasting. So I went back in. I did absolutely everything I could. I was stronger emotionally than I ever thought I could be. And times when he broke down and he was very self-aware and he literally was crying, needing me to support him, and I'm thinking, you've put me through hell and now you still need more from me, kind of thing. There was different points at that time I was a bit like, this is getting a bit too much here. But anyway, he called it, and he was like, I can't do it anymore. And I was like, well, I can't walk away, and I'm not going to leave this commitment. I said I can't do it. And then eventually he was like, that's it. And things rolled really quickly after that. You know, friends said, come stay with me. I stayed with her. That evening when I moved in, he was like sending me messages going, right, I want a divorce. I want you to divorce me on this grounds. I want you to divorce me on these reasons. I want you to file for it like ASAP. Boom, it was quick. So I moved into my friends before Christmas. The actual divorce process it was done by the end of February. It was like, I want to say, I can't remember if it was 10 weeks or something. Anyway, it was crazy quick because I was physically handing the documents into the courthouse, filling it in, and it was all agreed, and we just did it all ourselves. It was frighteningly quick. And I remember when it came through, and I remember my friend thinking I would be pleased that, you know, the divorce came through and that was it. And I remember just being so upset because it was like, it's the end of something that had been really hard, and I'd worked so hard, and there's a sadness in the end. Even though it was going to be the start of a new beginning, there was a real sadness in that end and how it had happened. And you know, time working out past that, it took me quite a few years to really get over it and get over being a divorcee, being divorced. I felt so much shame. I felt so much shame if people would find out. I was worried, you know, within the church environment as well, when things were breaking down within the marriage, because I felt like all these older ladies would be like, oh, she's so young and she hasn't really tried and they don't really know what they're doing. And I just felt like they were going to like judge me, and I felt bad that I thought that, but I just kind of thought they would think I was young and stupid. And they showed the opposite. They showed the opposite. They were so loving and understanding and really kind, and to show that level of love, not looking for information, not looking for details, but just showing true love and true acceptance. I saw that from so many people in my lives. Those are those angels that are there. No matter what hell that you've been through, that they can say that comforting word, the comforting touch, whatever it is, they're angels here on earth. You know what I mean? They really you know, for me, they're showing me how to do it. They're the role models that I didn't always have. My mum is an amazing role model. I love her. There's so many things that I still cherish about her, and I even end up really being a lot like her. But there are also parts where she didn't look after me. You know, she did as much as she could, but she didn't make us safe. She couldn't make us safe. There were lots of different reasons why it was very difficult for her. But ultimately, that's your first role as a parent. Protect your child and keep them safe. And, you know, all other things unfold from there. And I couldn't really experience fully the other emotions until I felt safe. And yes, I was out of those situations, but feeling safe within myself came a lot later. Whenever I was able to not live on stress hormones, whenever I was able to not constantly be in a state of worry. I remember there's a program called Smart Recovery, which is for it's like an addiction-based program. Started in England. Viv was part of that at Hangry's, and she was like, Judith, I want you to look through the books. I want you to go through the first course. And I was like, right, okay, because she was like, other people will be coming here, and I just want you to be able to understand what they might be coming with and how to be able to support me within this. And I was an RN, and it was like evidently clear I was addicted to worrying. That was actually my addiction. I had never had an other addiction. It was worry. And, you know, if things that started to go really well and really good for me, my brain would automatically think, what's going to happen next? It was waiting for impending doom all my life for such a long time. I didn't deserve happiness. That was the belief. I didn't deserve to be happy. I didn't deserve to be peaceful. I didn't deserve to have all these good things happen in my life. Like, I just believed I didn't deserve it. There were so many core things, and there's been so many things that have helped us, like the work I did with Viv. She did with havening work, incredible technique, basically helps to help your brain rewire itself and basically take you out of fight or flight whenever you've got moments where your brain just is hot wired into, you know, you've got those trigger points. It basically takes that, it burns away that pathway to make you go into that fight or flight situation, whatever those triggers were in your brain. That was an incredible shift. Meeting you, being treated by the machine, you know, it's like there's so many different like tools that are out there that make a shift, that make a change, and you're like, oh, I don't need to live in a life of pain. I'd had chronic neck pain since I was small, you know, from a girl, and then different, you know, accidents and whiplash and different things. I just lived with constant pain in my neck. I didn't know any better. It got really bad later on when I was in the marriage. I was getting like spasms then after the marriage, and then coming back to Northern Ireland, the spasms were getting much, much worse. I'd got out of the routine of how I kind of managed it before, and then you show up with your machine, and it was like, I never knew it could be that easy. I never knew it could be that quick to get you out of pain, and for it to last, for it to actually last and make that difference. Do you mean, because sometimes you're given a diagnosis, or you have an issue, or you have this pain or whatever, and it's chronic. You just believe that's you for the rest of your days, and you just have to manage it, and you just get on with your life. It just doesn't have to be that way. I didn't have to live in unhappiness. I didn't have to live with a cloak of shame and guilt with all the stuff that I'd been through in my past. It's like I'd carried it long enough. And yes, I'd tried to get rid of it, but I didn't really know how to get to the fundamentals, to shift it and to get rid of it. You know, and you've been a massive help with that. Double A's been a massive help with that. Viv's been a massive help with that. There's been so many things.
And Dr. Beck, Dr. Carlos.
Exactly. And it's listening to your intuition. It's like listening, and there's things that happen. They're not just coincidences. You know, God, the universe, creator, they're trying to go, like, try this. Listen to those. They're there. Trust your instincts, trust your gut, and do it and try it. And it basically, it like takes you up another level. And it, you know, it's like almost like if you're going like up steps to the ladder. Every time you go up a level, you can see a little bit more clearly. You can see a little bit more farther. You're not just still focused on that kind of one issue, that smaller problem. You're able to see a part of, you know, bigger part of the bigger picture.
Yeah, we'll get into that in another episode. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's turning into a Netflix series. I never thought that Hangry and Horny would turn into a series of Judy's life, which is kind of what the people are speaking, and they have spoken, and they love you, and they want you on, and we will do this together to help others to be empowered, to have discernment above all, because I told you it's not about like what I want, it's also about what you want. And if we can melt it together, make it a grilled cheese sandwich of a couple different cheeses, it's all the better, right? So, you know, like I said, have discernment, critically think, be open to possibilities, but don't have a mind and a brain so open that it spills out of your skull. You know, that there isn't this black and white thing. It's in technicolor. There's many shades of gray, more than 50 shades. And which, by the way, that actor, I've never seen the movie, but I heard that actor, the male actor, is from
Hollywood.
Yeah, just up the road, funny enough. But folks, again, thank you so much for your love and support. Thanks, Judy Floreal, for sharing your story of your heroin story, the heroin journey, the ability to go through this life roller coaster, and to show that it's possible to heal and thrive. So any final words, Judy Floreal?
Thrive is that key word. It was the word I remember a social worker writing in the paperwork, failure to thrive. That was me for such a long time, and I remember the shift and that changing, and me making the choice, and I was determined to thrive. And I've been determined to thrive since the end of 2012. That's been a long old journey, but there's been so many beautiful things that have happened along the way. And just trust in going forward, trust in what you want. You want that for a reason. It's good to have what you want, and it's good to have that aim and focus on what's the positive, because you'll discover all these different things along the way, and it's worth it. And it's a beautiful journey with lots of twists and turns, but there's treasure around, every corner. It's there for you.
Treasure in the cave. Absolutely. Thank you, Judy Floreal. Thank you, everybody, fans of Hangry and Horny. We love you. And have yourself an amazing day. Talk to y'all soon. Ciao for now.
Thank you. Love is enough.